Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Knife crime has increased to its highest level in England and Wales since records began in 2010. Police figures released by the Office for National Statistics also showed an increase in other violent offences. Let's take a closer look at the numbers. 22% increase in offences involving knives or other sharp instruments from the previous year, with over 39,500 offences. It's the highest number since records began 7 years ago. Firearms offences recorded rose by 11% to over 6.6 thousand. And burglaries rose by 9% from the previous year. Well, for more, let's bring in Sky correspondent Adele Robinson. And Adele, this comes on the back of a lot of reports of a really obvious spate of knife crime in urban centres, especially London.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, in London, there have been 50 murders so far this year alone. So these statistics, I would say, are unsurprising because of the developing trend that we've seen in recent years. The government usually attribute these rises in crime statistics to improved recording and proactive operations. But the Office for National Statistics have said, with regards to these statistics, that this has shown a genuine increase in violent crime in some areas. 22% increase in knife crime, as you said, 11% increase in firearms. And those have been disproportionately concentrated in London and in other metropolitan areas. But police forces across England and Wales in general have also seen a rise in those two areas as well, and across the board a 9% increase in homicides. The Metropolitan Police, like all the other police forces, have released their specific statistics. One of theirs is pretty stark. It shows a 44% increase in homicides in the year up to March and April of last year. Some of those are attributed to the London terror attacks, but they have described these statistics as showing a busy and challenging time for them. They've also said that this is to a backdrop against a backdrop of significant reduction in resources, which again will reignite that debate over falling officer numbers. We've seen 20,000 less officers since over the last 10 years. Now, Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, has been responding to this, and this is what he had to say to us earlier.
Well, the figures published today are increasingly worrying because they confirm that serious violent crime is going up across the country, going up across England and Wales. I think every police force in the country, bar one, has seen an increase in violent crime. I've been saying for some time now, this is a national problem that demands national solutions. These figures are unacceptably high, and it's really important the government works with all the police and crime commissioners to take action against this.
Problem with national solutions, according to Sadiq Khan there. Today, this all comes on the first meeting that the Home Secretary will hold for the Serious Violence Task Force, where they will discuss the recent serious violence strategy that they introduced, including the new offensive weapons bill, but she will have to address these statistics, in particular the issues around whether or not there has been an impact because of the falling number of police officers. That will be one of the main things, and some of the other more controversial methods that they've introduced, particularly in London, over stop and search.
Adele, thanks very much.
Gun crime is up, knife crime is up. In fact, in the last year alone, police have registered sharp increases in both in England and Wales amid concern over spiralling levels of violence. The figures from the Office of National Statistics show that knife crime last year was up by 22% compared with 2016, and robberies have increased by 33%. Our Home Affairs correspondent Leila Nathu has this report.
I was told I'd been stabbed 12 times and I had nearly died.
It was the dawn of 2017 and Will Flint was out celebrating the new year when he was stabbed while trying to stop an attack on a girl in the street.
So I had a punctured lung. The knife went into my left side and narrowly missed my heart. Physically I started to recover, but there was a lot of mental issues that were going on that I had to deal with in order to overcome what I went through.
Will was lucky to survive. But in the year that followed, hundreds of thousands of others became victims of violence across the country. Overall, violent crimes recorded by police in England and Wales increased by 21% last year compared with 2016. Knife crime stands out, with an increase of 22%. Gun crime was also up 11%.
Some of the rises we're seeing in violent crime, including the most extreme, such as homicide, are changes in the drug activity that we're seeing taking place across the country. So the links of violence to drug taking and drug dealing are well known, and we are seeing, for example, from hospital admissions, rises in drug activity.
There are two sets of crime figures out today. A survey of people's experiences, which captures crimes not reported to police, shows a more stable picture, and over the longer term, crime has fallen. But the police data reveals what's happening at the serious end of the scale, where there's been a surge in violence, largely here in London and in other cities. And already this year, the trend looks to be continuing. In the capital, there's been a spate of killings. The government recently launched a new strategy to try to tackle the problem. They want to focus on prevention as well as policing and tightening up legislation around weapons.
Any thoughts as to why we're seeing a rise in knife crime?
These young people in South East London have their own ideas.
Honestly, even if one person gets stabbed in London, that's one person too much.
After yet another stabbing in their area, they've come together to discuss solutions.
Think about the background of people and what their support is with their family, with their friends, the area they live in.
Put pressure on government to actually increase funding for youth engagement opportunities.
Police ain't listening, the police are against us.
Provide young people with a safe place. Youth clubs traditionally are always safe, they're always secure.
Everyone is searching for answers. How to stop violence, devastating lives and devastating communities. Leila Nathu, BBC News.
Violent crime is on the rise again, with the latest figures showing a large increase in knife and gun offences across England and Wales. Police recorded violence showed a surge in stabbings, murders, robberies and burglaries in the past year. One of the biggest increases was in the Greater Manchester area. The Force's Chief Constable told ITV News that the public are starting to see and feel the effects of a reduction in police numbers. From there, our national editor Allegra Stratton reports on the violent crime wave.
This is the moment Dorian Graham, in the bottom left of your picture, goes to stab Christopher Smith in the back of his neck in a Manchester nightclub last year. It's just one of the increasing numbers of violent crimes now recorded in Britain's cities.
In the centre of it is Dorian Graham, who's already got his knife out, and his knife's in his right hand.
Is that it?
That's it there, yeah.
OK, stop. There's the knife really clear.
Yeah, that's the first stab. It's all fast moving, and he stabs Christopher Smith here again.
So that's Christopher Smith, and that's the second lap. You can see him with his arm.
He actually stabs him 8 times.
What's the motive?
None. Dorian Graham is a violent person who decided that night that somebody was going to get stabbed. Knife crime does appear, more prevalent.
Christopher Smith survived. To secure the conviction of Dorian Graham, it took 20 officers 4 months. While most types of crime remain similar to 2016, today's figures shows the most harmful violent offences have continued to rise. There's a 22% increase in recorded offences involving knives or sharp instruments, an 11% increase in firearms offences. These crimes are concentrated in big cities like London and Manchester. Police figures also show a 9% increase in burglary. In Manchester, crime increased 37%, something the city's most senior police officer thinks is partly about resources.
We have 2,000 less officers than we did in 2010, which is 24% less. So, officers are really feeling it in terms of having to deal with more things, having to deal with them over a longer period of time. But the worrying bit is the public are really starting to see it now in terms of, the length of time to respond to less urgent and more critical incidents, as well as their expectation that things perhaps 5, 6, 7 years ago would have been investigated are no longer investigated because we're having to really prioritise how we use those resources.
They've all got the hoods up with it being raining.
OK, I'm making way right now.
Jeff Piercy has patrolled Harper Hay in northern Manchester for over 20 years and feels cuts to the police have had an effect.
Many years ago we would have been able to deal with it much quicker because of the staffing that we had. Now we have what we have.
So sometimes it'll be you on your own going to 10 youths, more?
Yeah, and to be fair, that happens daily.
What effect police numbers have on fighting crime is a bitter debate. But while it rages, today's crime numbers confirm Britain's streets are getting more dangerous.
Well, it's really scary stuff, isn't it? It's horrifying.
What's the government's response?
So they're saying it is partly about improving police reporting, and they're right. It used to be the case that some police forces could be quite sloppy with how they reported some of the crimes. That's now improved, so of course the numbers will go up. But the government, to be fair, is also clear that probably what is mostly going on is an increase in crime. It's not just reporting, there's an actual increase in crime. Now, they point us towards new legislation they're passing through the House of Parliament around acid attacks and around knife crime, but they also point us towards that document they released a few weeks ago about serious violence, which emphasised early intervention, getting in there early enough to stop young people from choosing a life of crime. The problem with that is that it takes time, and with these sorts of numbers, time is something that the government just doesn't really have.
Thank you very much, Dee Allegra.
Now, knife crime is up, firearms offences are up, and the number of burglaries has soared. New official statistics show that across England and Wales there's been a worrying rise in police-recorded violence, even though a separate survey says the overall level of crime has remained broadly stable. Labour have accused the Conservatives of creating the conditions for crime to thrive. Our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davis reports.
One of the stab wounds happened here to my side. This is the one that caused a lot of the damage, straight into my lung.
Stabbed 12 times on New Year's Day last year, Will Flint became one of the very first victims of the nearly 40,000 offences involving knives or sharp instruments to feature in this latest set of crime figures. Out with friends, he'd intervened to stop an 18-year-old assaulting a woman.
You know, as soon as I stepped between them, the knife was pulled, and without any hesitation it was used on me, and that was the scariest thing. Not only did he have a knife, but he was prepared to use it.
And that left the 28-year-old software developer with a punctured lung, lacerated stomach, severed diaphragm and severed spleen.
I feel very, very lucky that I still have my life and I managed to walk away with my life, and I'm reminded every day on the news and by these sorts of statistics that it could have very easily gone the other way. It makes me very, very frustrated that this problem is continuing to rise. But mainly I feel angry at the situation, and angry that that knife was brought out of the house and used on me, and now I'm permanently having to live with the consequences of his decision.
Outside London, the West Midlands has seen some of the biggest increases in knife crime in recent years. This air ambulance unit is dealing with more and more stabbing incidents.
Across our units we have seen an increase, yes. There was 67 incidents in 2016, and by halfway through 2017 we'd already seen the number at 84, so there was a considerable increase last year.
It all adds pressure to a government already being challenged over a spate of recent stabbings in London, where in the last 12 months, said Scotland Yard today, there's been a 44% increase in homicides. According to the Crime Survey of England and Wales, which captures people's own experiences of crime, the long-term trend, which has seen overall crime falling, continues. But when it comes to what the police themselves are actually recording, well then that's a different picture. Police figures are considered a better measure than the Crime Survey of the more harmful, less frequently occurring offences. And as well as showing knife crime in England and Wales is up by 22%, they record a 9% rise in homicides and firearms offences up 11%. But the police figures also show vehicle-related theft up 17%, burglary up 9% and robbery up by 33%.
So I was this side of the counter, my sister was there just about to go home, and two masked men, both had got machetes and one had got a bat, burst through the door.
One evening in January, in this Birmingham newsagent's, the owner Joe Desi was robbed, her sister beside her.
He wanted my handbag, I wouldn't give it him. So he lunged at me with the machete, went through my hair.
I was really scared, and the minute they left, I literally broke down in tears. There isn't enough police out there. We used to have regular patrols past the shop, and we used to have, when they wasn't around, the local PCSOs. There was a team of probably about 6 to 8 of them in this area, and now we see maybe one of them occasionally.
They're 2,000 officers down since 2010, said the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner today. It's becoming ever more fertile territory for Labour. The Home Secretary has repeatedly denied such rises are being fuelled by police cuts, a row which overshadowed the recent launch of their serious violence strategy. They point to an overall crime level being stable. No doubt alarmed, however, by today's apparent shifting picture in the realm of property crime.
Now, knife crime has increased to its highest level in England and Wales since records began in 2010. Figures released by the Office for National Statistics also showed an increase in other violent offences. Joining me now is the former Metropolitan Police Detective Inspector Peter Kirkham. And Peter, I suppose, given the stories that we've been running over recent weeks and months about the large apparent spike in knife crime incidents in London especially, this possibly comes as a little surprise?
Comes as no surprise at all. It's interesting that you've just moved on from the Windrush story. We've got exactly the same problem there as we have here. The government are not listening. I and others have been saying that cuts will have consequences in relation to the police service and to other factors as well, not just the police service, for years, and they do not listen. We've been pointing out that this is going to happen, that there is a crisis in policing, there's a crisis in crime coming. And it's here, it's all over the statistics again.
But we went down to Brixton a couple of weeks ago, and I interviewed a lot of young kids who had a history in being involved in gang-like networks and some with knife crime. And, you know, put it to them, we brought along the Metropolitan Police to talk to them, and they actually had no beef with the police. As far as they're concerned, this is not a police issue, this is a social issue. Kids are carrying knives on the streets of London because they're scared. And they're scared because of all sorts of different societal reasons. They don't particularly think that more police on the streets will help an iota.
Many misrepresent me, but I've always said that there are two distinct parts to this problem. There's the causes, which are socio-economic. They're nothing really to do with the police at all. The police have got little control or power over them or influence over them. They've got a role to play going into youth groups and into schools and working with the people there. But they're not running it. They need the other agencies, the other groups to do that. And then there's enforcement when someone's decided to carry a knife despite all that good work or how little or much of it is done. And enforcement is the police's world. If you want to feel safe on the streets, you feel safe on the streets when there are police regularly in your community. And that's just in general terms. Police doing things in communities, and they disappeared. In London, Sadiq Khan is trying to improve that. We went down to 1 community officer per ward. We're now up to 2 and hopefully a PCSO as well, so he's pushing things back. But we're nowhere near where we were in 2010, where we had a sergeant, a couple of PCs and a couple of PCSOs per ward. So, you know, these changes have happened. We'll no doubt get the government with the usual excuses. They're in denial about it, as usual. And just like the Windrush thing, Amber Rudd has inherited the policies of her predecessor, who now happens to be the Prime Minister. So she's basically a sock puppet Home Secretary. She can't do anything because that will inevitably undermine her boss. So she's stuck. But they are not listening.
When you look, though, at the overall crime statistics, actually, crime is going down. You know, so they obviously are doing something right. It's just in different areas it's going up, and other areas it's falling.
Crime is complex, and different types of crime are impacted to greater or lesser extents by police officers. Computer misuse, for instance, is not impacted by police officers on the street, but it's impacted by a police presence, be that police officers or police civilian staff, on the internet. But it needs people. None of these things work without police officers or police staff somewhere. We hear the usual sorts of excuses, and the fall, I think you're referring to, is in the ONS statistics, driven by a 28% fall in computer viruses and things like that. I don't think most people would see.
Doesn't that include cybercrime? You know, which is a serious, significant
misuse
problem.
offences, but not the frauds. But if you take that out, there's no increase or decrease in overall crime. I've been warning about that as well. We've seen the police recorded stats start to creep up. I've said this year, next year we'll start seeing the ONS figures following it because that lags by 2 years. Nobody listens. Nobody's interested in that.
You say no one's listened, but there's a serious violence task force which is meeting today, the government. Do you not think that you know, presumably police are represented on that. Do you not think that these kind of interventions do make a difference?
I'm not sure what the point of it is. If
it's for the government to listen, which is what you say they're not doing.
Well, I don't think they've got the right people on it if they want to be listening. If it's to coordinate activity, maybe. But we've got another talking shop of the great and the good largely. There's a few sort of proper community representatives and what I'd call real people on there as well. But I'm not sure what it is. But the strategy behind it, that it's meant to be monitoring, isn't a strategy at all. It's a few random thoughts on the subject. But we hear every time that, you know, people are getting better at reporting, police are getting better at recording. We've got an increase in homicides this time. What are they going to be saying? That the police are getting better at finding bodies?
OK, Peter Kirkham, always interesting to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming in.